Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Yes, it's on 14 to 8. A very good morning now to the Dubbo Region Mayor, Matthew Dickerson. And Matt, you have an exciting announcement today. This is about the Growing Regions program from the federal government and extending some form of fundraising, is it? Or what is this? Sorry, I'm reading this wrong because my eyes half closed today. Dubbo's received $7.2 million from the grant.
That's exactly right. And this is a project that's been ticking away for a long time, Bret, and it's a really exciting project. This is the Wiradjuri Cultural Tourism Centre. It's a $15 million build. Now, this is the biggest capital project that we will do in Dubbo since the theatre. Now, the theatre opened back in April 2010, so this gives you an idea of how significant it is. The big thing with this one, though, Bret, is the theatre was about $18 million. I'm going on memory for that one there. And we paid for that all ourselves. There was no grants. We didn't receive any grants for the theatre when we built that. And you may remember we had to have a rate rise. We had a 2.5% rate rise over 2 consecutive years to actually pay for the theatre. Well, this approximately $15 million Wiradjuri Cultural Tourism Centre, with the $7.2 million from the federal government, with money we've already got from the state government, we'll end up paying from ratepayers only approximately $2.2 million. So that's a really good outcome. And I think this will be not just significant from an Aboriginal perspective, not just significant for Dubbo, but this will be a significant feature for international tourism. I think a lot of people will be brought to Dubbo for these, and people that are already in Dubbo for things like the zoo will stay longer because they want to go and visit this particular facility. So it's been a long time coming.
Now, Matt, when I spoke with Murray Wood, your Chief Executive Officer, he had mentioned that Council could have applied for the 90-10 funding arrangement, which would have, I assume, I've been told that this would have seen a zero cost to ratepayers. So I know that there was a motion put up by Councillor Josh Black as well, and unfortunately that didn't get through that motion to withdraw from the round 1 applications for the 50-50 funding and not wait for round 2 to apply for the 90-10 funding to save ratepayers nearly $3 million. Now, why didn't that get through or get up?
Well, thank goodness we didn't withdraw from the process then, Bret, because obviously we wouldn't have been successful then in this particular round. The councillors at the time, that was put forward by, as you said, Councillor Black, that vote went down 9-1. Can't speak as to why every individual councillor wouldn't vote in a certain way. I can't get inside everyone's head, but certainly it seemed the general sentiment was this announcement was about to come through. Why would we withdraw from a process that was about to come through? From a reputational perspective, why did we go through that process? It was only December last year that we unanimously voted as a council, every councillor, including Councillor Black, voted to go ahead with this process, including the $2.2 million from ratepayer funds. I think the main reason that it seemed like that was a more sensible way to go was that it's a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. You don't know about the 90-10 funding. You don't know when round 2 will open. There were deadlines on certain funding arrangements. The state government, there were deadlines with that. Building costs are going up. It just seemed like a way to put it off into the never when you've got something that potentially is there in the hand right now. And Bret, every single day, if I can get a facility worth $15 million for this community and only spend $2.2 million of that money from ratepayers, that's a fantastic outcome. This will inject $90 million into the economy in Dubbo over the first 3 years of its operation. So this is a fantastic facility. And again, I look at the theatre, $18 million we spent on that, all ratepayer money. And who would argue now that we don't want the theatre? It's a fantastic facility that we have here in Dubbo. And in years to come, people will look back at this and say, what a fantastic facility. And we only paid $2.2 million for it.
Yeah, Matt, I'm not trying to overshadow the announcement or the success that you've had, but if you've had success in the first round, wouldn't you sort of have success in the second round anyway?
I don't think it works quite like that, Bret, and I suspect that it would actually work the opposite way of that. If we withdrew from the process just before the announcements were made and then put an application in for the second round, I dare say people looking at that would say, well, can we even trust this council? They might change their mind again. They're flip-flopping all over the place. We want a council that can deliver a project. We don't want a council that changes its mind on a whim, given the fact that it was only December that they unanimously said go ahead, and then come March they've decided to change their mind. You need consistency, you need reliability, you need professionalism within an organisation. You don't need people that are flip-flopping all over the place based on some vague populism. So I think it would have put at great risk the ability to get that in the second round. And you don't know. With government grants, they're all very competitive, Brett. There are people from across the nation applying for these grants. Obviously, they're federal grants. So you don't know. It's a competitive environment. So absolutely a bird in the hands with two in the bush, Brett.
My understanding is that with that funding that you've received, there's the build cost to ratepayers. That's what, $2.2 million, and then there's foregone interest. So it's not only going to cost just $2.2 million, is it?
The $2.2 million is what we'll be contributing. So the amount from ratepayers funds, you can get very cute with figures if you like, Brett, but the cost to ratepayers is $2.2 million. That's how much money we will be injecting from ratepayers funds. The $15 million build will have the $7.2 million announced yesterday from the federal government, the rest coming from the state government. Bottom line is, in the costs at the moment, $2.2 million will come from ratepayer funds, which again, I'm quite happy with that small amount of money. You can't expect everything to come from state and federal government. You can't expect the community not to contribute anything to these projects. Again, back in the theatre, we contributed the entire amount from ratepayers funds and we didn't manage to get any grants for that. Then you go to things like Barden Park. We were very successful getting state and federal government money, and still council contributed a little bit. It seems fair and reasonable, Brett, that the community where this will be built contributes some amount, and that's only a small amount out of the $15 million. It's a good news story all round, Brett.
All right. Back in July, though, of 2023, Councillor Pam Wells also moved an alternate motion, which was similar to every way that Josh Black's motion was, except not to go ahead with the 90-10 application, but to go with the 50-50 for round one in order to fund the construction of the Wiradjuri Tourism Centre. Why didn't that get up back then?
Again, you're asking for me to tell you what is going on inside individual councillors' heads. And so, again, the bottom line is this has been a project that's been promised to the community since 2018, Brett, and it's finally it's going to be delivered now based on this funding from the federal government. So it's been ticking away. There's been a whole range of changes. There's been a whole range of underestimations of what this cost will be to build this, and the scope has changed over the years. We've finally got to the stage now, 6 years after this project started, 6 years after it was all initiated, and 6 years after money was first announced for it, Brett, by the state government back in 2018, we've finally got to the point where we're going to be able to deliver it. So again, good news. I know you're trying to throw a whole range of things at it, but to me, this is just a great news story for the Dubbo community and for tourism in Dubbo and for the Dubbo economy.
All right, $7.2 million from the federal government, council putting $2.2 to make that the $15 million Wiradjuri Cultural Tourism Centre. Timeline-wise, Matt, when will that all get underway?
There's certain deadlines that have got to be met for that, for the various funding that we've got available for this, but essentially we'll have to ratify this at the council meeting next week, so that'll be the final chance for any councillors who want to stop this process. That'll be the council meeting next Thursday night, so that'll be the first hurdle to get over, and then after that we'll start the process of the various tender documentation, contracting builders, the actual build itself. So if you had to say, to get a timeline of when it will be completed, if I had to guess, and this is going to be a bit risky here for me, Brett, but I'd say middle of 2026, I think you'll have this facility built.
All right, I won't hold you to that, Matt. Let's move on to other good news. I had the launch of the Dubbo ASX 200 CEO series this week. Yeah,
that was exciting as well. This is a concept that started way back in 2015 and 2016, this previously ran, where we invited, it was a combination. We had Taronga Western Plains Zoo on board, Dubbo Business Chamber, Qantas, and of course Dubbo City Council, it was back in those days, where we essentially invited ASX 200 CEOs to Dubbo, and we fly them out for free, we'd put them up at Taronga Western Plains Zoo for free, and we'd ask them to speak at a chamber breakfast. And what we found from that, it was fantastic. We had CEOs from companies like Woolworths, companies like Macquarie Bank, companies like Telstra, so major companies that are obviously featuring on the national and international scale, and these companies were sending their CEOs out, talking to a chamber breakfast. You don't get to be the CEO of one of these multi-million, some cases multi-billion dollar companies, without having obviously some sort of business nous and some sort of business credibility. So what they spoke about at each of those breakfasts was very interesting for the businesses in the room, but it also gave the businesses in the room a bit of pride about Dubbo, that this CEO has come all the way from wherever they are and whatever they're running, taken time out of their busy schedule to go and talk to Dubbo businesses. So it was a really successful process. The amalgamation came along and that kind of stalled a lot of things, and this was another one of those ones that got stalled. And now we're staying there back up again with sponsorship from Qantas, with Taronga Western Plains Zoo on board again. Dubbo Business Chamber, that there will be their breakfast that they will run. And of course, my job is to get the CEOs out here to invite the various CEOs out here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously their knowledge is going to be quite good for those, other business leaders here in Dubbo and that sort of thing. But I mean, with their pay package, surely they could have paid for their own flight.
Well, part of the process is just the incentive, and we're paying nothing for it. Qantas are sponsoring it, so that's part of that process. If we had to pay, if Dubbo Regional Council had to pay for those flights, you're right, I think they could probably afford, but we just asked Qantas to come on board to sponsor it. They were happy to come on board. So from that perspective, it's a zero cost to the Dubbo Business Chamber, zero cost to Dubbo Regional Council, but what a great outcome for the community. And what you typically find, the Dubbo Business Chamber, they do run a breakfast each month where they have a guest speaker come along. But when you have people like this come along, we found that the audience size at least doubled, sometimes tripled, depending on who was coming along for those various breakfasts. So it actually adds to those breakfasts for the Dubbo Business Chamber as well.
All right, Matt, I've got 30 seconds. That stab list that was reported in a national paper, not good A for Dubbo, not good for the Dubbo show, had negative effects, but it was actually incorrect as well.
Unbelievable. Very sloppy journalism. I was very disappointed with this. Of course, front page news, the Telegraph was, there was a not a stabbing, but a hold up at knife point. And of course, I rang the police on Monday when I was told about this, and I actually asked the police about it, and they said there was no incident with a knife at the Dubbo show. And the Telegraph didn't even ring. They had quotes there from Tim Chin. They didn't even speak to Tim Chin from the police. And they had all these quotes about extra police brought in to deal with these events. Well, extra police are rostered on when there's a busy event like the show anyway. So very sloppy reporting and very damaging for our credibility and for our reputation when it didn't actually happen. So very disappointing from a journalist's point of view.
All right, Matt, I'll have to leave it there. Thanks for joining me. We'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks, Bret.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.